The May 3rd meeting of the Rockport School Committee is now in session. This is a very special meeting tonight for a couple of reasons. First, we have some visitors from the middle school. I'm going to look at my notes to get their names correct. There's Ava Mae Mertz, Lucy Mae Welsky, Ken Park, and Rumi Coram, who I don't think Carrie is not here. Your teacher, Miss Herman, is not here, correct? You're here on your own? Great. They're here to present to the school committee as an outgrowth of their work on civic engagement, so we're really happy that you're here tonight, very interested in what you have to say, and we'll get you out early just in case there's homework on your horizon for tonight. And if there isn't, we'll be talking with Ms. Herman about that. It's also special because it's the last meeting of the school committee's 2021-22 term. After next week's election, we'll have at least one new member, hopefully only one new member, to replace the departing Colleen Collins-Coogan, who has served 3 terms on the Rockport School Committee. Colleen has been, yes, absolutely. Ooh. Colleen's been an extraordinary member of the committee for 9 years. She's brought a passion for providing both students and staff with the resources needed to succeed, delivered with an attention to detail and intellectual rigor that invariably zeroed in on supporting the Rockport Public Schools predicated on data, robust curriculum, and process. This wasn't a surprising approach given her day job as a marine biologist who's often tasked with communicating between the two worlds of government regulation and in-the-field practitioners. Do you like how I describe fishermen there? In-the-field practitioners. Her presence always has the effect of raising the average IQ in the room, often cloaked behind a Columbo-esque, "I just have one more question," delivery that assures the recipient that not only were they seen and understood, but they're about to be actively engaged on the quality of their content. Colleen's been a consistently thoughtful and relentlessly collaborative school committee member, patiently encouraging dialogue to ensure all sides of an issue are examined for their merits and their limitations. She's been a champion and an advocate of the school throughout her service, energetically supporting its role in the community through a variety of outreach efforts. For our middle school visitors, you'll find throughout your life one of the great challenges you'll face is inertia, the tendency of objects at rest to stay at rest. That's true of a lot of things, including people and public service. But you'll also find, as Colleen has demonstrated, that if you want to try and make things better, you have to be engaged, have to become involved, and most importantly, you have to put in a sustained effort to overcome the pull of inertia. For 9 years, Colleen has put in that effort to the school's immense betterment. Thank you for all you've done for the students and staff of the Rockport Public Schools, and also your fellow school committee members. I speak for all of us, I think, when I say that it's been an honor, a pleasure, and a lot easier navigating some of the issues we periodically face with you on this side of the desk. And I think we have something special to commemorate.
And you're not getting away without a photo op, so you might as well come over here now.
Oh, that's right. Oh, this is our photo op.
On behalf of the district, thank you. We've not been together that long, but I have worked in 5 districts with a lot of school committee members, and you are top notch. We miss you, and thank you for your time. Much appreciated.
And I think it's sort of yeah.
You're coming up, right?
Oh, we're coming up. Oh, we're coming up.
We should do the whole. We should. Do
Yeah,
the whole
no.
We'll Photoshop Kathy.
This is so exciting. We should do it every week.
We have an IT guy.
I have to brush my hair every week.
Wait, you have to hold your flowers. Wow.
Where's the sash? We talked about sashes.
Mark and I will awkwardly hold it back.
He's got the height already. Perfect.
This is like our version of promenade.
So embarrassing.
I know. I didn't work hard to do that for you.
Thank you. Sure.
I think also, it's really touching to see a number of members of the Board of Selectmen here sharing their good feelings, I'm sure.
They had to send 2 because Sarah's worth more than
Right. One woman doing the work of 2 men, that seems about right.
If I could also say thanks, it has been an honor for me to serve. I love this community and the students especially, and the families, and it will continue to be a priority for me. And also, it's been a great way to really get to meet people that I otherwise probably wouldn't have intersected with. And you guys have all brought such important things to the table. I think we were lucky to have Nicole on during COVID. As someone with public health and social work experience, you were so invaluable during that. It's been great having Mark's teacher, parent at the table, bringing such a new perspective. And Mike, I appreciate all the leadership that you've agreed to continue to bring to the group. And, I think Rob did a great job bringing relationships with the other boards in the school and creating trust in the fiscal responsibility of the school and support for the schools. And Mark, I think you've done a fantastic job filling big shoes in a different way, taking it from that trust that was built and getting the plain language, messages out there, and also your in-reach with the schools and bringing the A-team to the table for planning and all the thoughtful work you've done. And I'm very optimistic for the school. It's so attractive. It's crazy for people not to send their kids to our school, which I already thought, but now, even more so. So thank you all. It has been an honor to serve. It's very bittersweet to leave. And I do feel like this is my last child left the school 3 years ago. So this is my last official connection with the school that, I'll keep them some unofficial connections, but I will miss it. So the next thing I'm going to do is motif number 1, race to support the school. Slow, but
Better you than
I'll do that. Oh, the apples are back.
Yes.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know why I wasn't expecting this.
So awesome. All right, so we're going to move quickly to our middle school presentation, but first, approval of minutes from April 5th. Everybody but Kathy, who's not here right now, was here, so we can vote on this. Are there any amendments or corrections to the? No? Do I have a motion to approve the moments of moments? This is a moment. The minutes of 4-5 as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, we'll move to public comments. Is there anyone who wants to speak to any item on the agenda? All righty, so then I think we'll move right into the middle school presentation. So guys, you're on. And kind of game show style, we have a panel right there.
Let me just put that in slide deck mode for you.
Hi, I'm Lucy Mywelski.
I'm Ava Mae Mears.
I'm Ken Park.
And I'm Rumi Coram.
Hello, school committee. We are 8th grade students from Rockport Middle School. We have been with Rockport schools for many years now, so the district and our environment mean a lot to us. As our civics action project, we would like to help both. We would like to increase the amount of solar panels here at RPS. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our presentation and consider our idea.
I got it. I got it.
How does solar energy work? When the sun shines into solar panels, energy from the sunlight is absorbed by the PV cells and in the panel. This energy creates electrical charges that move in response to the internal electrical field to react in the cell, causing electricity to flow.
Why are solar panels a good choice? Solar panels have many benefits, such as providing clean, renewable energy. They don't emit harmful pollutants or greenhouse gases into the water and air supply. They offset energy costs. They reduce your carbon footprint, protect you from rising energy costs, and promotes a cleaner future.
why our school needs solar panels and why it's a good fit. As you guys might be aware, our school uses a lot of Rockport's energy. And from the website, we found that it was 33% of the town's energy. And from research, we spent about 205, what the heck? $250,000 a year on fuel and oil. This is a lot and we need to do something about it. And as we are aware, we have some solar panels at the Wellness Center. And according to Solar Edge, an website located at the rpk12.org website, we saved about 21,826,000 pounds of CO2 emission and saved about 165 trees. These solar panels were installed in 2017, meaning we saved about 4,000 pounds of energy annually. Oh my goodness. This statistic will skyrocket if we start to focus on solar panels and install more, and it will help save our planet and help get more schools' budget to focus on other stuff.
How is Massachusetts getting involved? MassPIRG is Massachusetts Public Interest Research Group. They're a group of college students who work with professional staff at colleges and universities to tackle climate change, protect public health, revitalize our democracy, feed the hungry, and more.
Massachusetts Public Research Group campus organizers are getting involved in the campaign to pass a bill that would require the state to transition to 100% clean energy by 2045. The state is widely considered one of the most environmentally positive. Still, relatively few schools have made the leap to 100% renewable energy sourcing. 15 schools statewide, including all 4 of the campuses in the University of Massachusetts system, are involved in the effort to go 100% renewable.
The Green Grant. Our plan to pay for the solar panels is by applying for grants. A specific grant that we have in mind is the Green Community Grant. In fact, we have received grants from them before. They helped convert our school to LED lights and conserve energy. To get this grant, we would have to send in an application that, if accepted, would fund our school to get solar panels. From then on, there is an annual check-in to make sure you are using the money responsibly and are making an impact. This grant is a perfect option for helping our school and to promote a brighter future. The Green Communities Division provides funding opportunities to reduce municipal energy use and costs by way of clean energy projects in municipal buildings, facilities, and schools. The Green Communities Division strives to help all 351 Massachusetts cities and towns find clean energy solutions that reduce long-term energy costs. As of February 2017, Rockport is a green community.
What we can do. While converting to 100% solar energy is big, we can start with small steps to have our heating and hot water powered by solar energy. This also lowers our energy costs. Solar water heaters can be a cost-effective solution to generate hot water. They can be used in any climate, and the fuel they use, sunshine, is free.
That is all, and we appreciate your time taking out of your school committee session to listen to our presentation. I hope you enjoy it, and please take our idea into consideration as our planet is rapidly dying. I hope you have a good night.
Yes, well, I don't look behind you now, but Ms. Herman is here.
She snuck in.
She's watching you. That was an excellent presentation, and I think some of you may or may not be aware that, I mean, buildings with large flat roofs that don't become overshadowed by trees, which is basically a description of our whole school campus, are the perfect candidates for this. A few years ago, we had a wonderful student, Nathaniel Kirby, who pursued one of these grants. brought it all the way to the finish line, and the time was running out in terms of when the state was funding it, and it kind of got fumbled between what our attorney or what the town's attorney wanted to change in the language and what the company who provided this material said was the standard operating procedure for the state. So it was really kind of disappointing for all of us to see how far that effort went before it didn't make it. But like I said in my opening remarks, it's about persistence. This is a great idea. I still think it's a great idea. I think the thing we need to think about as a group is we need a champion for this, because we need that last 10 yards to get this thing installed is something that we're probably going to need help with. I mean, it's similar to, many of you perhaps don't know that we had someone donate an observatory to us, and we had one of our local banks, the Institution for Savings, give us seed money for that, and we had the Education Foundation for Rockport giving us money to build the base for it. It still doesn't exist in large part because there isn't someone who has the bandwidth to be a champion. So this is a great idea, and personally, I find it very exciting that you guys have done some of the research to present to us, because it's really meaningful, and you're absolutely right. Particularly in a coastal community that's starting efforts to think about what happens with global warming and what, if anything, can we do about that, reducing our emissions and suppressing our carbon intake is really something that could help. So I don't know if anyone else had other comments they wanted to share, or?
Well, you go ahead. I had a question regarding the previous project that was before I was part of the committee. Do you remember how large that project was, like in terms of cost, or how many panels, or what that output was going to be? Do you remember any specifics?
So I don't, because I'm not sure if I'd come back just at the end of that, but my understanding from that time period was there was about a month left before the funding for that, which was zero cost to us, expired. It was a special state grant, and where we kind of got held up was we put, they provided us the paperwork, we submitted it to our town attorney, they wanted certain changes made. As I said, the company who was doing this for other school districts said, well, this is what we've agreed to in terms of language for the state. And then it kind of died because there was no one to like kind of compel someone to give in that situation. So I'm not sure if the grant you're talking about, because we have had a lot of very successful green initiatives, those LEDs that you were talking about, I think they've saved to date like $1 million in cost, but also it's less of a footprint carbon-wise. I'm not sure if the same program exists within the umbrella of what you're presenting, but that's something that's really worth chasing. And I think that the thing we're going to have to think about is who can champion this, who can sort of drive this project forward, because it's really important.
We've actually researched the previous project, and is that making a weird noise? Whatever. And it cost around $11,000 to
Okay.
install the one big solar panel, and it is angled, I think, towards the east, and it absorbs a lot of sunlight for the greenhouse. And I think it's fair to say, we all think that it's a very reasonable investment for our
Right.
school
And
and
that's,
community.
you're talking about the one that currently exists on the greenhouse, yeah. Yeah, that's really, in fact, it might even be great to pick the brain of Nathaniel Kirby, who's off, well, I think he's in Europe right now. He went to Williams College, but, we have another comment. Great.
Ross Brackett, 27 Main Street, Board of Selectmen. I think it'd be a great idea to bring them into a Board of Selectmen meeting too, to present to the Board of Selectmen, and then we can get you guys teamed up with the Green Community Task Force, and then hopefully they can help you guys champion this.
That's a
forward.
great
I know
idea.
The last one got mixed up, so as you said, language and the town and I think it was also the company, not the grant itself. So obviously, hopefully we can get that working again with town council.
That's great. Would you guys be willing to go to the Board of Selectmen as well? Because interestingly, they're school buildings, but the town owns them, doesn't owe them. So there's kind of a cross-pollination here, which is really helpful. Okay, so we'll work with the Board of Selectmen to schedule a time for you guys to come in and give that presentation.
And if I
as
could
well.
add to that, I know there's some people here who are from the UU Church in town who just recently went to the planning board and got approval to put solar panels on the church in a fairly large installation as well. And I know they have a lot of expertise, and imagining that they're here in the meeting, I wouldn't be surprised if they wouldn't mind pitching in some of their expertise too.
Go ahead.
If I may, my name's Gary Sharps. First of all, I want to commend these students for their presentation.
Very smooth.
Great. And also for just looking at this as being something very important to our community. At the Union congregation, we presented to the Historical Commission last Thursday our plan to install solar panels on the roof of our building, and we were successful. And it's really, really exciting what change that's going to make in this town. And I think, I know I've been talking to Carol Chirico and myself have worked on the project, and we'd be very happy to get involved in taking your ideas and moving them forward along with working with the Board of Selectmen, et cetera, because I think this is a great idea, and I think we're just beginning to see these things starting to get some motion. And one other thing to make you all aware of, that there was a bill passed last year by the federal government. Any solar installation, you get a 30% reduction in the cost, because you'll get money back from the federal government. So like our project costs around $50,000. We're going to get $15,000 back from the federal government. So our net cost is only $35,000. So it's really exciting stuff, and I'll be glad to work with you working with these students. So thank you.
Excellent.
So I can share Nathaniel's presentation with you all, so you'll have it, but I think it was a lease type arrangement, so it was no cost to install it. Then they would offer a fixed, like a buyback at a fixed cost for 20 years. And I think his estimate was that the school would be saving, almost all, there were huge savings across each school. The savings for over 20 years were almost over $1 million for all three schools for over 20 years. So I'll share that slide so that you all have it, and then I can actually share it with your teacher as well, and she can get it to you.
Awesome. Great job, guys. That's fantastic.
I had a really quick question.
Yeah.
I didn't know not to put you guys on the spot. Great job on your presentation. You mentioned that there were some other schools in Massachusetts that have done this, and I was wondering if you know anything about those, or where they were, or kind of how they made it happen.
Yeah, so this is a college example, but still in Massachusetts. Hampshire College is in Western Mass, and they were the first campus to go completely on renewable solar energy, and they have almost every building has solar panels. They have huge fields, and they even have a whole research building solely powered by solar panels. In other public schools too, Manchester, Essex, that's one example. A few schools a bit closer to New Hampshire, like Amesbury, where else? There's quite a few up there that have started this. So it's gaining some momentum, which is exciting.
Exciting, thank you.
So, Mr. Chair, my former district, actually, Tingsboro was one of the 15, I think, communities that did this. So I can take zero credit for that initiative. There were a bunch of other hardworking people that were there around us. But it took, when you talk about perseverance and steadfastness, it took 3 or 4 years for that community to really get from the start of the project, which is right where you're sitting, to us actually seeing, before I left the district, before we saw a full high school with panels across the top of a flat roof. But I do know that it was a very successful initiative. It saved the taxpayers and the school district quite a bit of money, not to mention all of the environmental impacts. So I applaud you for what you did today. The other thing, as a superintendent, that I'm proud of when I watch you all up here, this is not easy, right? What we do, talking to the public on camera, live, trying to be quick-witted and intelligent at the same time, which is hard for some of us. That's not easy, and to see eighth graders step up and make eye contact and deliver a slide deck in public, and some of you, when I told you you're going to be on TV, your faces quickly changed, and you adjusted pretty nicely tonight. And what you're really learning in Ms. Herman's class, and hopefully in all of your other courses, is the difference between civic inaction and civic action. We need the next generation of people to really understand that action matters. We can put signs on our lawns, we can protest, we can use words, but if you don't take action, you don't move the world forward. And so you're starting to take action, and my hope is you'll see some fruits of your labor at some point in the district. So be proud of yourselves. Thank you.
Great job, guys. Next up is is this middle school? Yes, it's a middle school chorus field trip to Canopy Lake, which Mrs. Pike has done for a number of years.
So in your correspondence, you will see the field trip request. As is protocol, because it's an out-of-state field trip, we need school committee approval. So that's what we are seeking this evening. And if you look at the cost and you do the math, you'll figure out that it doesn't seem to make sense on paper, but the school is splitting the cost between the families and the school, so that we're every time we have an opportunity to keep costs down for educational trips or anything like this, we do that. So that's why if you did the division, it might not look like it makes sense, but the other half is being covered by the schools.
Great. And it looks like the appropriate number of chaperones will be in place. They haven't been named yet.
Correct.
But Patty's definitely going to be one of them. Any questions or concerns? No? Do we have a motion to approve the field trip to Canopy Lake Park?
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor? Aye. All right. That moves us on to personnel matters.
So, Mr. Chair, we do have some personnel updates for you. Resignation at the end of the year, Miss Beth Ann Cardenas has resigned, or will be resigning her position as special education teacher at the end of the 22-23 school year. Miss Mariah Marsh will be resigning her position at the elementary school as an adjustment counselor at the end of the 22-23 school year. Mr. Stuart Nozo has resigned from his position of team chair at the middle high school at the end of the school year. Mr. Anthony Prestigiovanni will be resigning from his position of music teacher at the end of the 2022-23 school year. And Kai Young has resigned from their position as middle school science teacher at the end of the 22-23 school year. We thank all of them immensely for their service to the families and students of the Rockport Public Schools. And some appointments to announce tonight. Carol Cafaso has recently been appointed to the position of high school chemistry teacher to start the 23-24 school year. And Jonathan Clayman has been appointed to the position of grades 6 through 12 school psychologist for the 23-24 school year. Not that I want to minimize Ms. Cafaso's position, because we understand how difficult it is to find highly qualified math and science teachers in this day and age. So we thank her very much for coming to our district. But Mr. Clayman, as many of you know, that's been an open position for over a calendar year now. And coming out of COVID, the need to meet the social emotional needs of students is great. And to finally fill that school psychologist position after having a long time and having extended service providers and people on sub-separate contracts trying to fill in, and having our own school psychologists in the district, as well as our other adjustment counselors kind of covering. It's been a long haul, so we're really happy to fill both of these positions and announce that tonight.
Do you know if either one of those positions, I know with your new communication plan, there was some talk about using the UR codes with some of the postings, and do you have any idea if either one of these positions was a result of?
So I don't have any data in front of me. I'm asking principals as they conduct interviews to just kind of do some anecdotal data collection around how did you see it? Did you see it in the newspaper? Did you find it online? Did you get it off of LinkedIn? If you remember, we added in many social media platforms. So my hope is over the next year or two, I'll be able to collect some of that data, and we'll continue to use the platforms that seem to be working the most. Yeah.
Well, it's really encouraging to see that school psychologist position filled. Absolutely. It's been a long time in coming, so good work there getting it in. Our next item is Share the Success, where usually our student advisory council member who sits next to June is here and gives us a full update on the activities in the school. He's not here tonight, so
We'll get a longer update at the next meeting.
Yeah,
Okay.
we certainly will. Subcommittee updates. I don't know if we have any subcommittee updates at this time. Okay, we have a little house cleaning here with the academic calendar.
So this seems to be an annual recurrence, right, that we have to shuffle at least one date around based on the contract for the prom. So Ms. Rose and I are going to do our best next year to try to get all of the stars to align. It just doesn't seem to happen. So as a result of the high school finalizing next year's prom date for May 31st, the district needs to make May 31st an early release day as a normal practice. And as you know, you previously approved the calendar that had May 17th on it. So we'd like to make May 17th the regular school day and May 31st the early release, so we'll just need a motion to make that change, and then Ms. Ogier will make the calendar change and update it on our website.
I don't imagine there are any concerns with that. Right, so we have a motion to approve the RPS 23-24 academic calendar as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor? Great. Move on to a review and approval of the middle school, high school assistant principal job description.
So also in your drive tonight, you see a draft two-page job description. The district has had many versions of this job description over the years, as this position seems to historically have come and gone every 4 or 5 years. So I took a deep dive into the district's past job description, as well as 2 or 3 from school districts that had some really good exemplars, and put together a nice, clean job description. So hopefully you've had time to take a look at that. We are excited to post a whole bunch of positions between tomorrow and the middle of next week. We feel like we've been really aggressive in our timeline, and that's how we've been successful already getting candidates. And we're going to continue to be aggressive and get all of these postings out within the hopefully next 3 days, but minimally by next Tuesday.
So presuming that we've had a chance to review these in our drives, are there any questions or concerns? No? Okay. So do we have a motion to approve the middle school, high school assistant principal job description as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes unanimously. So now we'll move to an annual ritual, but the first time for Superintendent Branco. It's the superintendent's summative evaluation. So we're going to tag team this here. So we can jump ahead to the next slide. We'll give a little context here. So the overview and timeline of reviewing the performance of the superintendent of schools follows a fairly regular pattern. You can see here that the stages are self-assessment. Don't worry, I'm not going to read it all. Analysis, goal setting, plan development, plan implementation, formative assessment, and then down where that little arrow is, summative evaluation. So that's where the school committee, after having typically a year, although I think we're at the 10-month mark right now in order to meet this calendar with a new superintendent, reviews the performance. We can skip to the next slide. So what is the process? We actually rate the performance of the superintendent using state criteria and ratings categories. These are divided into 2 major areas: progress against goals. So these are goals that we set collaboratively with the superintendent. And then assessing performance on standards, which are ones that are used across the state. After we've done that, individually, the chair distills this into a summary report where he tries to take the opinions of 5 different individuals and meld them faithfully into usable and supportive information for the superintendent. The review, discussion, and approval of this is in public by committee. That's what's happening tonight. And then evaluation challenges. So some of the challenges I found in receiving the reviews of all 5 members of the school committee was the superintendent is in his first year in the district. So some of these categories assume that you've had a full year to actually review, and the superintendent has been incredibly active in every area represented. So obviously, part of an entering superintendent's challenge is to first take a survey, a lay of the land, to find out what shape the district is in, where there are opportunities for improvement. So we can't really hit every category in a supremely meaningful way in the same manner that he might on the second year of this evaluation. So that was one factor that members had differing takes on. Small sample size. There are 5 of us who are providing this information, so obviously if one person says, hey, we want more ice cream in the school, it looks like 20% of the body is really interested in this. So kind of weighing and measuring what their numerical score was versus then what their anecdotal comments were part of went into the summary that we're going to go through tonight. Variance in member application of categories. So you're going to see that in a moment, but essentially 5 different people might have, even with clearly defined categories, a different take on what those categories mean and what their criteria consists of. So let's go on to the next slide and we'll take a look at that. So the state's rating definitions. At the end of this process, there's a simple sheet that gets submitted into the personnel file of the superintendent and is filed with the state. And they have 4 possible grades, if you will: exemplary, proficient, needs improvement / developing, or unsatisfactory. Boo. The tough one here, and it's analogous to private industry, where what if someone is doing absolutely everything that you expect of them and at a high level? Well, the state refers to that as a proficient performance. And then above that, there's a category called exemplary, which indicates that it's so far above it, it could stand as a model for the rest of the state in that category's criteria. So that's often where you'll see, as we go through this review, trying to parse the distinction between those 2 categories. It's challenging. And in the outside world, you often see this in annual reviews where, how much equals outstanding versus really good. To make it even more difficult, if you look down at the bottom of this slide, although they give us 4 different possibilities to assess a practice, they want us to use 5 to review them. So exceeded, met, significant progress, some progress, did not meet. So there's a little bit of squaring a circle here. You have 2 slightly different measures that they're trying to get you to coordinate. You can go on to the next slide. So step 1, progress towards goals. This was what you're going to see here is a quick look at how we rated things against those 5 categories as required by the state. And then at the end of these bar charts, if you will, there'll be some anecdotal data so you can see what they actually mean. So this one, in terms of effective entry and direction setting, by late spring, the district will have broad recognition by key stakeholder groups about the district's most critical needs. We'll have a widely understood process underway to identify the strategies and goals that will address those needs most effectively and the measures that will be used to assess progress. So essentially, this is the result of the superintendent's entry report, where he's come in, he's taken the measure of the school district, and now he's proposing changes for that. Because we're at the 10-month mark, what you'll see here is that there are 2 exceeded, 1 met, and 1 significant progress. And I think what we'll find as we get to the end of this is really this reflects the distinction that members made between, with the entry report having just been delivered, would you call this met or significant progress, because it hasn't literally finished into activities in some cases. So, but you'll see there's a real variance here in terms of how we interpreted the categories, I think, rather than the performance, and you'll see proof of that when we get to the anecdotal remarks. Go on to the next slide. Maintaining momentum during the transition. Keep the district moving forward during this year's transition in leadership by working with principals and other district leaders to ensure that meaningful progress is made on critical district and school goals. Again, you see the same sort of spread where 2 individuals, 2 committee members felt that it exceeded our expectation. 1 felt that it met. 1 felt there was significant progress because it hadn't yet completed. Next slide. New superintendent induction program. So this one will cause us some challenges later on. So here, every new superintendent, person who's been promoted to superintendent, perhaps moving to a new district, as Dr. Branco has, demonstrate skills in strategy development, data analysis, and instructional leadership by actively engaging in the first year of the new superintendent induction program that's hosted by the state. Our perception as a committee is that the mentor assigned to Dr. Branco has been phenomenal. She's like the sharpest tool in the shed, and Dr. Branco has, I don't want to say, I think they've made quite a wonderful collaborative pair, because you bring a lot to the table, and having that sort of support and mentor, I think we've really seen pays off. In terms of the ratings, one person's exceeded, one person's significant progress, two have met. And if we move to the next slide, you'll see sort of the anecdotal summary comments. So in terms of accomplishments, Dr. Branco has been vigorous in introducing a framework of gathering data, engaging stakeholders, formulating an approach, and clearly communicating SMART goals within a context of local, state, and national educational best practices. He's excelled at meeting a number of personnel challenges by providing exceptional replacements through his professional networks and engaging staff. The changes to the curriculum and the communication plan were well thought out and timely. His entry report was well received by all members. Engagement of the administrative team was celebrated in terms of really leveraging the expertise of all levels of management to effectively, collaboratively manage the change. In terms of encouragements, one member felt that the school walkthroughs were phenomenally successful and appreciated enhancement to standard operating procedures. So the encouragement there was, yeah, keep those up. We think there's a real benefit in that. I'm sure Dr. Branco does too. Your entry report revealed the power of stakeholder assessment, and cyclical iterations seem worthy of consideration. So by that, I think we saw when we were looking for a superintendent and looking for input from the community, from the staff, from parents, and then your own efforts in those regards, those pretty much matched. And what we liked about that process was we got a very clear and unvarnished flow of information, and we're thinking that's a great thing to keep up on a periodic basis where it seems to make sense, rather than to simply inundate people with lots of emails. Ratings, the range of ratings reflected that not all criteria can reasonably be sequenced or addressed in the first 9 months of a new superintendent. So, for example, a strategy for district improvement is a result of the entry survey, and thus the measures to assess progress are still pending or underway. So that's what I pulled from the comments in terms of met or some progress. That the feeling was, you're doing great, but the entry survey just arrived, so how can we say that everything's been fully implemented? A conversation that I don't think you'd have with the second year of a superintendent's. So before we move on from the summary comments, I just want to pause and ask the school committee, do you feel that fairly reflects your input and your concerns for this category?
Good job.
Okay, so we can move on. So now we go into the second portion of assessment, which is performance on standards. So the state defines many categories that were required to review the superintendent on. The first standard is instructional leadership, which involves curriculum, instruction, assessment, evaluation of staff, data-informed decision-making, and student learning. So we can move to the next slide. So in those categories, 60% rated Dr. Branco proficient, 40% rated him exemplary. And if we move to the next slide, we'll get to see why they did so. Dr. Branco's focus on curriculum and data-based instruction informs his nuanced and appropriate understanding of the relative importance of MCAS and other standardized testing versus longitudinal measures of progress. He's been transformational in aligning, engaging, and empowering the senior administrative team to collaboratively problem solve with impressive results. Connections to area colleges was seen as a positive expansion of the current pathways to success. And I think Dr. Branco would probably jump in and say, well, some of those efforts were underway when I got here, but I think that the feeling of the committee was that fostering an environment that encouraged looking in a different way at these opportunities was something that's characteristic of what we've come to see as your operating style. Encouragements, some members felt that a focus on the health curriculum at all levels of RPS and on the middle school with respect to curriculum alignment and student expectations was suggested. It's not to say that it wasn't there, but it was an area that some felt could be enhanced. Dr. Branco's preliminary thoughts on examining rigor, length of school day, and providing additional STEM offerings and shaping new channels for student interest alignment was applauded. So part of this really focused on, or the feeling was that some of the discussions we've had in previous meetings where a new look at what students who might have an interest in nursing or engineering or computer programming, freeing up the time in the day to be able to get to those by changing what the requirements were and potentially giving them an interest path later on in their career. Those are all seen as very healthy things, and although it's very, very early days for that, the initial moves have been appreciated. The ratings again reflected the challenge of hitting all categories in the first year. Some respondents felt despite that the trend line of your performance was towards exemplary. So I'm going to pause here and check in with the committee again to make sure, did I adequately express your concerns and your thoughts? Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. Standard 2, management and operations, the nuts and bolts part. These consist of the environment, the human resources management and development, scheduling and management of information systems, law, ethics and policies, and fiscal systems. So some dry stuff here. In this category, 60% felt that Dr. Branco was exemplary, 40% proficient. We can move on to the next slide. So the accomplishments here, the committee consensus saw Dr. Branco bringing an approach that is pragmatic, objective, and nurturing, while also applying high standards to staff goals and performance, upping RPS's game. His collaborative development of the budget and communication of it to the public enabled seamless committee and public approval. His focus on comprehensively reviewing all school policy within his first contract was seen as necessary synchronization. In terms of encouragements, streamlining calendars, communications, and a focus on professional development and supporting district goals was appreciated, as was his focus on locating, supporting, and retaining exceptional staff. The challenge of personnel issues in a small district can make needed actions seem outsized or personal. Dr. Branco has delivered needed difficult change with professionalism and compassion for those impacted. Ratings. Proficient Plus was cited by several members regarding fiscal process and personnel issues. Now, that category doesn't exist, but that's the benefit of getting anecdotal comments in addition to numerical radio buttons being checked. So here, have I faithfully transcribed the thoughts that you had in this review, captured them? Okay, so then we'll move on to the Standard 3, family and community engagement. Engagement, sharing responsibility, communication, and family concerns are the components of this category. You can move to the next one. 60% found proficient, 40% founded exemplary performance. We can move to the next page. Accomplishments. Dr. Branco has revamped our communications protocol, ensuring that there is a uniform message being broadcast to the community, eliminated individual communication avenues that were potential liabilities, and engaged the community stakeholders in a long series of meetings and polls that allowed him to develop an outstanding superintendent's entry plan that captured and reflected public perception on areas of improvement and growth. He was accessible to a wide range of community activists and family members, and professional in managing his time to accommodate one-on-one meetings with them. Encouragements. Additional communication about issues that arise regarding staff and or students would help keep uninformed speculation at a low level, even if generic in nature. Candor with staff during budget reductions was seen as superlative. Rating, some members noted that with little visibility into day-to-day resolution of family concerns, it was hard to really evaluate. And I'm not saying that in a negative sense, it just literally they didn't have much to go on. And to some extent, it's hard to know how you could communicate day-to-day family concerns because of HIPAA and other requirements. But they applauded the holistic, consistent approach to solid communications. So, pause here again and just check in and see, did I miss anything? Or are we feeling that that pretty much covered it? Okay. Standard 4, professional culture, and this is really, I think, the last category. Commitment to high standards, cultural proficiency, communication, continuous learning, shared vision, and managing conflict. So what we see here, again, is sort of this 60-40 split, 60% exemplary, 40% proficient. And then the write-up on professional culture accomplishments. Challenge for a new superintendent is to first engage and then lift the existing culture to meet new challenges. Dr. Branco has been impressive on both counts, empowering his staff to expand their professional boundaries while also challenging them to up their game. He's a strong proponent of data-based decision-making, but also understands that data is not actionable knowledge and tempers statistical information through a lens of long-term educational experience. He is firm and fair in managing conflict and does not hesitate to make difficult decisions that are clearly within the best interests of the district. He leads by example and demonstrates how to pursue a culture of continuous improvement within the context of day-to-day challenges. In terms of encouragements, Dr. Branco has made professional development a priority for both himself and the staff. And I would probably edit this slightly to say he has made meaningful professional development a priority for both himself and the staff. He effectively communicates with all committee members, staff, students, and the public, answers all questions, asks for and takes feedback well. Ratings, many rounded up based on limited data but impressive results. Does that feel like I've accurately captured? Okay, so then we'll move on. So final thoughts. Dr. Branco, darn, I got all the way there without using that long A.
grandfather loved
I was so happy. Dr. Branco has brought tremendous energy, professional focus, and a data-driven best practice approach in his first year of leadership in the Rockport school system, supporting the goal for continuous improvement in services, supporting the intellectual, emotional, social, and physical well-being of the students in its care. His willingness to comprehensively examine existing systems, process, and procedures combined with his collaborative engagement approach has resulted in significant improvements in how staff is deployed, resources are managed, and curriculum offerings are expanded. His entry report and annual budget book showcase strong communication and engagement skills, allowing the district to introduce needed and significant changes while motivating staff to provide an enhanced learning environment. As we move towards the second year of his contract, Dr. Branco will likely accelerate these efforts, now having established new frameworks and structures to allow the district to respond to changing demographic and funding challenges. Fair assessment? Okay, so then the very last portion of this is the document that writes this up. It's publicly available, but it basically takes a smaller view of all of that content. And this is what is reflected in it, the report card essentially. In terms of goal 1, effective entry and direction setting, the rating was exceeded. Goal 2, maintaining momentum during transition, met. Goal 3, new superintendent program, met. Probably worth pointing out here too that a few members felt that it was hard to know how you would, if you were fully proficient in participating in the new superintendent induction program, which by its nature is fairly prescriptive, how you would exceed the criteria of that. The second portion of it, the assess performance on standards. Standard 1, instructional leadership, proficient. Standard 2, management and operations, exemplary. Standard 3, family and community engagement, proficient. Standard 4, professional culture, exemplary. And the overall summative performance was proficient. So I guess I would quickly check in again, although I think I see how this is trending. Is there any, first of all, any comments or any commentary or additions that anyone wants to make relative to this, or do they feel that this is?
Only, and you mentioned it earlier, when you look at those, the ratings for each of those categories and then look at the overall, you can see that between the proficient, exemplary, exceeded, and met at the top, it's like almost exactly split. So it is sort of unfortunate to me that the overall kind of goes to the lower rating of proficient, and I really do wish there was a category in between, like proficient plus, I think you said before. Because I think that would more accurately, if you didn't go through that whole thing, just saw the overall.
Right.
So I wish there was that, just kind of what you had mentioned before. And just as a side note, with working on the school committee and then in my teaching with all the different superintendents I've had, what you've undertaken with the leadership and the budget and the curriculum and the professional development and the communication, that is so much. It's amazing. And I just can't wait to see how the dividends of that coming forward. So I guess just taking that kind of in mind, and because most of the time it's like one of those things is kind of the goal for the year, and you've done all of that, which is incredible. So it's really, I think, been a great year.
Thank you. I just wanted to sort of echo what Michael said also about the frustrations with the tool, and I'm glad that you were able to sort of summarize all of our comments so that you could read all of the commentary. And I know that this more dry sort of thing is what goes in, your permanent record or your personnel file. But I think that the tool has a lot of limitations, and so I think reading through sort of the commentary and the things that we said was sort of reflective of where we're all coming at. And also the challenges you mentioned with people interpreting different ways. Even when you sort of have it laid out for you, there's a lot of room for sort of interpretation. You don't really get to explain what you mean by your interpretation. So I'm glad that, that we had all of those, and I hope that, reading those kind of gives you a good sense of where we all are.
Okay, I'll throw in 2 cents. So, as Mark said, you did all those things. Also, they're all of them have created a really integrated vision. Like the way you did all those things was to braid it together with this really great vision, and also, again, to build on what was already being considered, or they were what the A-team and others were striving to do. So I hope that I do feel that has help the culture of the whole school, come together with you within 1 year. It's pretty amazing. So nice work. Great job. Look forward to see where it goes.
And I think it's interesting that in some ways this parallels the comment about the MCAS being just a single point of time, and, what you have to bounce that against. I mean, not week after week, but every other week after every other week, as we sit here and see your progress across all these goals, I feel like we feel so excited that we have you here as our superintendent, and to have it sort of ground out into like a word like proficient. It just seems underwhelming. Like, I wish they would change the language of that. Yeah, it's like, yippee. But internally, I think the feeling based on the comments I've seen is more a yippee rather than a yippee. So I guess the next moment would be, do we have a motion to approve the superintendent's summative assessment as presented?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Great. Thank you, Dr. Branco. I don't know if you had anything that you wanted to respond to us with. I don't know if that's...
I mean, if you've never been in a position where you're publicly evaluated, it is a strange feeling. So I guess what's really important just to say is that the work is always hard and the work is never ending when you're in education. But this environment is what makes it work well. So the relationship between the superintendent and the school committee, the relationship between the admin team and the faculty, relationship between all of the staff and the families of the students, that's what makes Rockport special. And I actually think that's what makes us function well. And you don't have to look that far across the Commonwealth to see lots of dysfunction and lots of funky things happening in school districts. And so, I'm proud of the relationships we've started to build. I think we work collaboratively together. That's super important. So that's what the public has to understand, is that they're all of our children, and we're really proud to take care of them and educate them for the amount of time that we get them. And I'm happy that I chose Rockport. I'm happy that Rockport chose me. It's been a solid first year, and I look forward to many, many more.
What do you guys think? I'm looking at the middle school. Did you have any idea this stuff was going
I
on
did beat
behind
the
the
8th graders
scenes?
in basketball, though, so.
Oh, okay. So would you rate him as an exemplary basketball player, proficient? No, okay.
I did fall down, I think.
Ken says, okay, proficient. All right, so I think we'll move on now to.
Can I, sorry to interrupt you. I was
Absolutely.
gonna ask, so our process, how we did this, did that work for you in putting this together? Is that something we can tweak for next year, or what are your thoughts about the
Yeah,
process?
I think all of you were actually really thoughtful in the anecdotal portion. I mean, just picking a rating, there isn't much to read from that, but it really helped in sort of rationalizing the anecdotal comments versus the numerical rating and an understanding, well, how could half of us think exceptional and half was met? But those comments inform that. So I think that was really efficient. I wish the categories would be unified so you didn't have 5 different criteria that have to resolve into 4. I get why that's there. It's probably to give hope to those who have developing skills who aren't really meeting the criteria, and I'm so happy that we're not in that position. But I thought it worked pretty well, the sort of Google Docs type, not Google Docs, Google Form type.
That's
So that
a
was
big
good.
improvement.
Yeah, I do
We used
too.
to do it.
It was so hard to do previously.
And I think, Dr. Branco should get credit where credit is due in terms of in prior years trying to take that horrific, literally unprintable form and try and enter our comments into that when it wasn't even necessarily a requirement. This made much more sense. And I think, I don't know if you can flash up the final form. We're not going to walk through it because, again, it's just a recapping of this information. Yeah,
Which one is it? Let's do this one.
yeah, I think, nope. It's like the PDF version of that monstrosity.
Yeah.
So, just so you can see, the final grades, if you will, that you saw on the last slide of that deck, here's where they're recapped into, 2-page or so, maybe it's like 8 pages. But essentially it recaptures those comments and fits into Dr. Branco's performance file. But that's where it ends up. And that actually, because these forms have been recreated away from the ones that the state provided, it was really easy to first do the PowerPoint and then repopulate into that form. But thank you for asking. That's great in terms of continuous improvement and how can we do better. So I think that would, unless there are any other comments, that would bring us to the finance portion of our standing agenda. I don't know, June, if there are. I know you're working furiously to give us a quick view, and we weren't sure if it was going to be this meeting or next one.
So it's in.
No, it's
in there.
complete, and it's
in
in
there.
your drive.
Triumphant.
It's in there.
It is in your drive, it's in the same format as before.
Yep.
The fund flow, and then also the, more of a balance sheet summary update. We're running at about 730,000 over on our gross budget, as what was budgeted a year and a half ago for at this point. There are 3 main categories that are a concern. Kind of ironically, a third of that issue is operations, maintenance, and utilities, which the 8th grade so elegantly just pointed out to us. And the other half is, the other 2/3 is our special ed, which is, I think the public has been made educated over the past year, is really out of our control. It's all new children and services required and state mandates that happen from 18 months ago when this budget was created. Now, the question is, how do you capture those expenses without decimating your reserves? And that comes from mainly a couple of spots. The offsets to help keep our end-of-year reserve healthy and at the same level as this past year is through additional grant funding of some salaries and positions. Once that funding goes away, those positions will go away. So this will not be a continuous building problem. The other aspect is circuit breaker funds are continuing to come in a little bit better than before. And then the generosity of the taxpayers and our town government in our sped reserve contribution, which they voted at town meeting to give us 331,000 approximately from that, and that does make up all the deficit. So that is how we're hoping to stay on track and end with our same reserve balance as we did the year before. Why are we not reducing it? It's because down the road, long-term projections, school choice numbers will be dropping, circuit breaker will be dropping. So we do need to make those up. Cost of living will be going up, and those reserves will be needed in the upcoming years. And so we want to have a very robust reserve so our services are maintained. And that is where we are on the financial end. The other aspect, it's reporting season. Spring reporting season, I should say. There's always some reports due. The federal government asked for all our ESSER, which is COVID relief grants summary, but they were asking for last year. They're very delayed. So those were completed. I'd like to thank Martha Wright for assisting me in completing those. One of them was needed a lot of language that she's an expert on how those funds are used, especially in the special ed and instructional world. We are in the midst of finalizing our school choice for this year. We have already reviewed all our enrollment. It is currently in our special ed office where Cheryl Keating is entering every service that every child receives into a very complex formula. And then it will calculate what those cities and towns' contribution will be increased by. And she's doing that, and we're expected to have that uploaded to the state on Friday. They will calculate. They promise that they will have a final number for us on June 30th. We are on track to what we guessed at the beginning of the year, so within $20,000. So pretty good right now. So that's pretty well right on target. So that was great. And then our final aspect is
expertly estimated.
Yeah, well, or lucky guess. But then the final thing is the state has decided to switch over from our last, when you apply and use grants, you go into their system. It was called Grantium, and you would do all your applications and your approvals and your amendments and your fund requests and your reporting. They have now decided that they're switching to a new program called GEMS, and that will be switching July 1st. So there have been many, many training sessions that Martha and I have participated through Zoom. I will be probably attending a segment at my annual conference in a couple of weeks. There'll be follow-up at the end of June where Martha probably has to go to Worcester for an entire day of training for the special ed training specific on that piece. And also then all our grant writers, which are a lot of administrators and some teachers, will have to be trained by Martha and myself and the state. So that is kicking in as well. So we're busy.
So, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, we talked about collaborative leadership earlier. We're trying to celebrate it and model it in the district. One of the things that we just have to keep reminding ourselves, in a small district, we do not have extended capacity to do this kind of work. And in large districts, there's an assistant superintendent and sometimes an assistant business manager, an assistant special education director, and 2 people working in an HR department. And it's me, June, Martha, and 3 hardworking principals. And so I think that, not to mention the admin staff that supports the heck out of us. It needs to be said that when something like the state simply upgrading or switching products, which is often how it's told to us, what that means as far as personnel deployment, time management, and the heavy lift. So, I just thank everybody, and when we, particularly around grant funding, and we're trying to be responsible about building a budget and supplementing that budget in a variety of ways, it takes almost every single member of the leadership team and almost every single admin assistant that we have to somehow pull data together and to meet timelines, to write reports that are meaningful and representative of Rockport. And if we don't do it well, then we miss out. And so I'm proud to say we haven't missed out, and we've been pretty fortunate, particularly this year, to get 2 or 3 or 4 competitive grants, which is hard to do in small districts sometimes. So thank you again to everybody for doing that work. Thank you to Martha and June for sort of taking the lead around the structural frame of how we're organizing grants this year. And thank you to the principals who continuously write them.
June, I know it's probably too early to know, but in your initial exposure to this system, is there ultimately any benefit to any of the people using it other than those receiving it?
This is being recorded, right?
I really was getting used to the one we had. They were working all the
Sure.
bugs out. I wish they were keeping it. Anyone has anxiety over something. No one likes change, when it's not something
Yeah.
fun. I think the state will find benefit where before when you ask for funds, you explain what you've spent and what you project you will need for the next 30 days, and then they will give you that allotment. This new program, they're going to pay you in arrears. There will be no asking of what you need for the next 30 days. So now the town has to absorb it, get reimbursed, absorb it, get reimbursed. I'm sure the state thinks this is wonderful. I'm not really a fan. So,
It adds moving parts on our.
and it has, yes. So that's an issue that I have some concern on, especially in a smaller district. Near the end of the year. That requires you to then to have additional funds and reserves to cover it for that 30 days. You can't put it on the town to magically, fund it when they're trying to close out their free cash as well.
Right.
So that is a concern, but it's the state, they outrank us, and we will adapt.
Right. And the reason I asked that was I was thinking about the move to Aspen where the administrators or the educators' take on it was, look, all of these systems are bad in their own unique ways. There's a lot of uphill learning to get into this system, but we kind of feel like once we're in there and once we're there, there's some benefit to us. That's different, that, obviously that's a
And right.
consumer product that we've purchased rather than the state telling us
Yes,
we're using it.
and most likely that won't be an issue. That part, once everybody has the learning curve, that part will be seamless. The only concern I can say is the fact that it's a 100% reimbursable system going forward, instead of at least getting your next 30 days of needs met
Gotcha.
in advance.
Get low, that's gonna be scary.
Yes, so in a very tight, years, which you can over the cycle of the last 20-something years that I've been here, there are those few years where the town is scraping every dollar, we're scraping every dollar. And to all of a sudden at year end, when you have summer checks coming out for staff, and they don't want you to ask for July and August money till September, we're gonna have to front that. So we may have to just maybe factor different ways people are paid in the summer. If you're, who knows, that might be a union discussion, and it may just be fine that we don't even have to approach it. So
Right.
I guess it's a wait and see, and your fingers crossed, and I think
Right.
in the
We'll know
end,
when
it
we
will
get
be what
there.
it is, and we'll be fine.
Okay.
Positive attitude.
Reasonable. Any other questions on finance before we move? No?
Not a question, but we got used to looking at very complicated budget spreadsheets, and I knew how to navigate them, but I really appreciate the ones you've got for us here. Thank you.
Summary sheet is really, I know it can be difficult to get both of them out, but it really is wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so that would move us then to any walk-on school committee discussion. Is there anything that anyone needed to bring up or wanted to express? I think one thing I'd like to express is the phenomenal music department trip to Italy is only made possible by the dedication of those teachers and administrators who went on to make sure that, how many kids went? 80, 70? Yeah. I mean, the amount of locations they went to, the amount of performances they gave, shepherding everybody through that, watching their faces go through the prosciutto processing plant. It was really, it really met its billing as trip of a lifetime. It was really incredible for the kids who got to go on that. But a big thank you has to be made to the teachers and administrators who herded cats throughout all of Italy. Really great.
I wanted to just say that I was lucky enough to get to watch them perform in Rome at their venue, and I know Molly, who's out in the audience there, got to see them as well. And it was just so incredible to see. There was actually a full audience of people who are not parents, and people were videoing, people were like excited to see them, and it just sort of, I think, made them feel like performers. Hopefully made the staff really proud of everything they had done to sort of get them to that point. And I feel like the kids were really appreciative. There was a lot of tears because it was their last performance, and so I think the kids really felt how special it was to be able to have that opportunity. So all thanks to the staff and chaperones. It was really amazing, and I'm so glad that our kids get to go out and experience that, and it's really a life-changing thing for a lot of them, I think.
And their performances seem to, with each amazing venue, they rose to the occasion. It was amazing to hear what they sounded like in the Vatican, in the Marble Quarry. And now, the next couple of weeks at the Shaylin Lou, right, as they go through various senior performances. So thank you to all of the educators and administrators who went on that trip and made it possible for the kids. All right, so I believe there is a need for executive session, which means that,
Mike, before you guys enter again,
yeah,
I just want to say on behalf of the board, we want to thank Colleen for her commitment to the town. And the dedication you guys mentioned about the staff and teachers, you have to remember, it comes from you guys. You guys show that dedication over the top 9 years. To me, that's a big dedication that you've made to the school system. And then you get to see these students go in front of you. We get to see it as parents. And it all cultivates from you guys. You guys bring it into the schools, and you show the effort, you show the dedication, and that just gets passed on. So I just want to thank you on behalf of the board, and I think I can say on behalf of the town as well. And if we were going to use the grading system today, I would say you exceeded.
all right, so we're going to go into executive session. We're going to exit once we return from executive session in normal session. So I think what that means is we're close to having the technology to go to black and be silent in this room, but I think we've opted to exit the room. So for those of you who want to end your evening here, you're more than welcome to run for the exits. We'll be back in a little bit to close the meeting out, but there are no other scheduled items before the adjournment. So the question here is, do I have a motion to exit to executive session for the purposes of contract discussions with a return from executive session and a regular exiting through normal session? Anybody want to repeat that?
So moved.
Articulately expressed.
What he said. Second.
Second, okay, so then we have to do a voice call vote.
Coogan, yes?
Kelly, yes?
Lorenz, yes.
Altier, yes. We're out of order, and we just can't.
I know, well, I wanted Colleen to have her moment of calling us out. All right, so I guess we'll go off to another room. So we have to formally come out of executive session. Do I have a motion to adjourn executive session and return to regular session?
So moved.
Second.
Voice call vote, Kelly, yes?
Altier, yes.
Coogan, yes?
Lorenz, yes.
All right, great. So as a result of our conversation with contract negotiation as the subject, I'm going to entertain a motion based on the summative review that we looked at tonight to increase the superintendent of schools' salary by 2.5%, making it $175,644 for the next contract year. Is there any discussion or concern about that? All right, so do I have a motion?
So moved. Do I have to
Second.
repeat it?
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so the vote passes unanimously. I don't believe we have any business other than that. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everybody. Motion passes unanimously.